And I have the honor to be introducing our next speaker. And let me just pull up his bio here so I can do him justice. And it is going to be none other than Scott Catamas. So Scott and we connected about, I think, 3, 4 years ago, and it was on his Awakening World show, and he was doing it with Deborah Juicy back then. And we've been kind of supporting each other with different types of events, gatherings. He's had me on his show multiple times. He's come and emceed on Portal to Ascension, and just the amount of commitment and love. Before I get into his official bio here, amount of commitment and love and dedication he has to consistently show up for people and to be doing this work and accumulating many amazing speakers and musicians in order to create a platform for people to go to and experience a sense of joy, connectivity, unity is pretty incredible. So I really have to take my hat off to Scott and what he's done, especially during the COVID times, because during those times, he was creating some events for people where people were stuck at home and providing a lot of inspiration and love, which is why I feel he has such a dedicated following right now because of all the energy that he put out there alongside Deborah in the beginning and continues to do so. So Scott Katamas is the creator of Love Coach Academy and the Global Peace Tribe. He has a very successful career as a writer, director, producer of educational programming, where he won multiple Emmy Awards and reached millions of people through his productions. He worked with many leaders in New Thought field, including Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, Tony Robbins, Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, Ram Dass, and more. He was so impressed with the transformational power of these tools, he shifted in being a full-time life coach and teacher. When the pandemic hit, Scott immediately put together a full slate of free online programs with his senior love coaches. He's also partnered with longtime friend Deborah Juicy to create Saturday Night Alive and the Global Peace Drive, that he's still continuing creating events through Awakening World. Through the Love Coach Academy, there are currently a dozen weekly online shows. I think this is a little old, probably. You've probably done much more since then. And I'll just say here that now he just continues doing this work, and I'm just really honored to be able to be connected with Scott and just be walking this path of awakening with him, just providing a lot of content and connecting people so that we can have a sense of unity as we move forward and become the world citizens that we are all destined to be. So, Scott, appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for everything you do, man.
Oh, thank you, Neil. That's a really beautiful introduction. And it's happening. It
Mhm.
really is happening. It's an incredibly exciting time, and it's a powerful time on the planet. And because this is such a special time, I have a very special gift I'm going to give to you and the entire audience. And that is, I am going to share with everybody the meaning of life. Who wants to know the meaning of life? Well, tonight I'm going to share it with you. And I'm actually not joking. I mean this sincerely. So, about 25 years ago, when I was producing television, and a lot of you probably watched the shows that I was a producer on: Strange Universe, The Other Side, The Paranormal Borderline, Looking Beyond. And it was really an amazing time being a producer on all those shows. And we did, of course, several shows on near death experiences. I became good friends with a lot of the people in that world and still bring people like Daniel Brinkley and some of the others onto my current show, The Awakening World. At the time, the world's foremost authority on near death experiences was a man, Dr. Kenneth Ring like on your finger. And you can Google him, you can read, he's written several books. Clinical psychologist who really dedicated 10 years of his life to studying authentic, legitimate near death experiences. He would only accept a case if it was somebody who had been declared dead by a doctor or a police officer. They had to have been dead for at least 20 minutes. They had to have at least some partial memory of what happened while they were out there. And most of all, they had to be willing to be interviewed and hypnotized by a professional hypnotist while Dr. Ring would ask questions to probe the subconscious. By the time I first interviewed him, he had been doing this for 10 years. He had researched 300 cases all across the world: black, brown, yellow, white, children, adults, Christians, Jews, atheists, Muslims, you name it. And people's experiences were very varied. And for the most part, people's experiences usually fit within their spiritual beliefs. Christians would see Jesus or Mary. Buddhists would see the Buddha. Some people saw deceased relatives. Some people saw the big golden light. It really varied. But there was a commonality he had not even been looking for when he started. See, when he started, he was a clinical psychologist. He was an atheist. He was skeptical. He didn't have a spiritual background. He actually thought that a near death experience was the brain shutting down. And that's why people would have those experiences. That's what he thought when he began. 10 years later, he had definitely changed his belief system and had gone much more spiritual because of what I'm about to share. Again, the meaning of life. Almost every single person had at some time in their near death experience a moment of either being shown the meaning of their life or remembering the meaning of their life or having an experience of it. And it was always a variation on the same theme. We're here to learn to love, starting with ourselves. Now, each person had their own unique caveat, their own unique challenge. I'm here to learn to love myself, even though I lost my legs in a car accident, or even though I'm an alcoholic, or my father beat me, or my business failed, or whatever their trauma was. You know, they would have that, oh my God, yeah, I'm here to learn to love myself despite the wounding or the disillusionment or the challenge. Now, I first met Dr. Ring around 1995, 1996. So that was a long time ago. And that was actually before I went into my whole love coaching time. Uh, but it's been interesting because as a relationship coach, I get very close to people and I've been able to apply what I learned from Dr. Ring. Okay, as I'm working with this person, what if the meaning of their life is learning to love themselves despite whatever it is that they're dealing with? And after working with a lot of people, thousands, I'm convinced that this really is the meaning of life. We're here to learn to love. You know, earlier we talked about the incredible illusion of separation that most people are under. Most people are under the hypnosis of thinking that they are just this body and they are separate from everybody else. And so, because of that illusion of separation, that's why greed can take place and people will do whatever it takes just to survive, just to take care of themselves. But certainly anybody watching this program right now is somebody who's probably had experiences of your multidimensional self or spiritual awakening or experiences of the awareness you're actually one with the universe or one with each other. And scientifically, how amazing we're living in the time that it's been proven. We now know that the unified field of ever-changing molecules is basically what the great spiritual teachers were trying to tell us for thousands of years. So we're living in this incredible time in which our highest science and our true spirituality is coming together. And I'll give you a wonderful example of that. In the Shastric scriptures written in Sanskrit about 7,000 years ago, um, God, which is called Brahman, is assigned 26 principles. So there are 26 principles of God in those ancient Vedic scriptures. Fast forward to our most sophisticated science, quantum physics. And quantum physics, in studying the unified field, has determined that there are 26 principles of the unified field. And you can directly correlate those 26 principles of the unified field with the 26 principles of God, Brahman, from 7,000 years. Our true self is the entire universe. That's our true self. We're here to learn to love. Now, we start by learning the human, learning to accept ourselves, learning to accept life, and we graduate to learning how to love family members, friends, beloveds. And as we now need to expand into really loving those that are different. And of course, the great tragedy is almost every war are people killing each other that actually are not that different from each other. You know, it's interesting. Jerusalem, I did a lot of work with Zachariah Sitchin before he died. And he pointed out that three of the five world's great religions all are seated in Jerusalem, which he pretty much proved was an ancient landing site. It was an ancient ET landing site. So we've got this history that we're beginning to remember, beginning to uncover. You know, there's this great awakening. That's why my show, which I want to welcome everybody watching on the Awakening World right now. And that's the name of my show, The Awakening World. That's what's happening. We're in an awakening world. We're remembering who we truly are. We're remembering the real nature of reality. We're breaking out of the illusion of separation. And what ties it all together is love. But not just ooey gooey Hallmark Hall of Fame type of love. Now is the time for the love that the great teachers have always taught, which is compassion. If you take a look at the great teachers, they taught us compassion. They taught us to have profound acceptance for our environment, for ourselves, for our world, profound acceptance, profound compassion. This is the love that we all need to learn as we graduate. We need to learn self-love because to the degree you love yourself, healthy self-love, and self-love is not selfishness. Selfish people don't love themselves. That's why they're like a vase with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much you pour in, it just goes out. The people that I know, that I respect, who have healthy self-esteem, they're out there doing great things in the world. They're the Neil Gars and the Adam Apollos of the world, because when you have healthy self-love, you want to contribute to the well-being of others. My mentor was Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of Nonviolent Communication. Marshall had a very beautiful quote. He had many beautiful quotes. The one I'm going to share right now is, the greatest joy in life is contributing to the well-being of others. And I've added that the greatest tragedy in life is people who don't know that. So when we learn to really accept ourselves, accept our humanness, accept whatever choices we've made that we might regret, we learn to love ourselves, then we want to contribute to the world. We want to be of service. And as we begin to really recognize who we truly are, and this is on an individual level, and then humanity. And right now, obviously, there's an opportunity for humanity to go beyond war and to really become a galactic citizen, which, of course, is what a big part of this whole program is all about, is really becoming galactic citizens. So, to the degree that we really want peace in the world, and we really want to create an environment, an energy system that the galactic family will feel safe coming here and will want to come here, and will believe that we're not going to attack them. And I think we all know that clearly they're way more advanced than we are. We wouldn't stand a chance militarily, but we may do stupid things. We may shoot missiles at them. We need to create this incredible consciousness of love and compassion and invite all of us to be in both worlds. Be in the world of holding the vision for the big galactic family. Play your role in holding the highest vision for, in our lifetime, to experience peace on the earth, to experience our ET galactic family coming and really helping us, supporting us. But at the same time, we have to apply love and compassion every day into our daily life. when you read about the great the great long-term spiritual teachers that last, they walked the talk. They lived it. I think we all have known people that had big epic dreams bringing it from a place of power. And certainly the whole reason that there hasn't been disclosure has been because the military industrial complex wanted to keep their hands on that technology, did not want free energy to be available. And I won't repeat all of that because Adam Apollo did a great job of describing all that. But that's what has happened. So we need to, in our daily lives, really apply healthy self love, healthy acceptance, healthy love of the people around us, healthy love and at least acceptance for those who think differently than we do, or have a different color skin, or a different generation, or a different religion, or a different belief system. We've got to practice it ourselves. Because those of us that are kind of attracted to this movement, we are the global peace tribe, whatever you want to call it. We are the portal to ascension. We are all the different organizations that are represented here. We are the imaginal cells finding each other. A caterpillar, and I always love this analogy, most of you have heard it. A caterpillar has a voracious appetite. It eats so much that it bloats up and it dies. And as it dies, it kind of creates this goo, this like soupy goo. And the imaginal cells that are bouncing around find each other, come together, and create the butterfly. And we really are watching the death of the caterpillar, the death now, using the analogy, the death of an unsustainable humanity, a humanity that's destroying the planet, destroying each other, killing each other. But within that, we are, every single person, if you hear my voice, if you're watching this, you are an imaginal cell of the new paradigm, of the portal to ascension. And we're all finding each other and we're finding how to collaborate. You know, uh, when the pandemic hit, and I started doing these shows, the Deborah Juicy Saturday Night Live with Global Peace Tribe, it was beautiful to see how everyone was collaborating. And just today, this morning, I was listening to the humanities team, and a lot of my friends and collaborators were on that program. Here we all are collaborating tonight. There's not a competition. There's not that kind of us versus them that I grew up in the entertainment industry that was pervasive in that industry. In this field, in our global peace tribe, awakening world, portal to ascension reality, we're all supporting each other. We're all finding ways to collaborate and co-create because we're here to create the new paradigm. And we create that new paradigm through compassionate understanding of each other, acceptance of the differences, practicing self-love, and being of service. Absolutely being of service. And so I'm going to close with two stories because I love to tell stories. The first is about the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama allowed brain researchers to hook up electrodes to his brain. They wanted to track how his brain functioned and how the synapses of his brain fired. And so they hooked him up and they ran tests for about 90 minutes. And they found that at all times, the synapses were firing in the forebrain, in the frontal and temporal lobe, never in the back part of the brain. Now, the back part of the brain is where the reptile brain is. That's the reactive part of us. A little bit of biology. When a child is conceived, in the first 24 hours after conception, the first thing that's formed is what becomes the reptile brain. It ends up about the size of a walnut in the back of our brain. But the child, us, all of us, we start with that little reptile brain and then the brain stem, and the entire body is built around our reptile brain, which has got just one job: survival. So reptile brain, survival. So when we react when we perceive the possibility of attack. Reptile brain takes over. We choose fight, flight, freeze, fawn. That survival mechanism is tapped into the illusion of separation. When we believe we're separate, when we believe it's just me and this body against the world, my reptile brain is running the show. And the reptile brain, again, only knows how to fight or flight or freeze or fawn. Fawn is like in the small dog that when the big dog attacks it, it gets on its back, it surrenders, it exposes its neck, it says, okay, you know, you win. Please don't kill me. That's not a good place for us to live from. Biologists are proving to us that we are moving from reptile brain reactivity or survival into frontal lobe consciousness thriving. So back to the Dalai Lama, they hook him up. You notice always his synapses are firing up here. The lead researcher decided to really test him and pulled out photographs of Chinese soldiers burning down a Tibetan temple. And they showed the photographs to the Dalai Lama. And as the Dalai Lama looked at these photographs, he wept. He wasn't stuffing his emotions, he wept. The synapses all fired. Then the lead researcher said, come on, I want to know, how do you really feel when you know Chinese soldiers are raping Tibetan women, murdering your Tibetan people? How do you really feel? Dalai Lama was silent for a while. Synapses are still firing up here, never back here. And finally he said, it reminds me that I must pray equally for the Chinese as I do for my Tibetan people. This is the movement of the human species. We are going from reptile brain reaction into frontal lobe responsiveness. Now, each and every one of us are going to have moments in which painful things are happening. An ex-wife, an ex-husband, a teenage son, a mother-in-law, a disgruntled employee, a difficult boss, the person flipping you off on the freeway, whatever it is, we're going to have moments where people say and do things that agitate us, that hurt us, that trigger us. And our job, both as individuals and as the new paradigm of humanity, is to practice radical acceptance, radical compassion, and to operate from up here and not from back here. And we're blessed because we have so many ways that we're learning how to do that. We have meditation, we have yoga, we have martial arts, we have music, we have incredible wisdom keepers. You know, we don't just have like one or two every week. Neil has wisdom keepers on his show every week, twice, three times a week. I've got amazing people on my show, and they're black and they're brown and they're young and they're old, and you know, it's wisdom is flourishing. Wisdom is flourishing because it's helping us all really wake up. And so it's not a coincidence that at the same time that Congress right now is negotiating this bill to formalize government disclosure. And right now, an apocalyptic scenario is taking place in the Middle East. And right now, climate change is absolutely threatening the world as we know it. And right now, thousands of people are waking up. Millions of people are waking up. It's all happening at the same time. And yes, we're having more and more sightings, and more people are channeling. Maybe they're channeling galactic beings, maybe they're channeling spiritual beings or angelic beings. But this whole multidimensional reality is opening up because we really are living in a time at the end of an old paradigm, call it the Kali Yuga, if you will, and entering this new age. But each and every one of us have a job to do, you know, and that job is whatever our form of service might be. That job is certainly learning how to practice compassion and acceptance, and to truly practice love, which will lead to my last story and kind of the conclusion. I think I'm shorter than the 40 minutes they've given me. So, Neil, I'll be done in a few minutes. I want to remind us of a commonality of different spiritual teachers. Let's start with the Buddha. Many of you may know the story of Prince Siddhartha. He was, and this is historical fact, by the way. They have a lot more historical records about Prince Siddhartha and the Buddha than we actually even have, at least that we publicly have of Jesus, of Yeshua. So Prince Siddhartha was his father was a sultan, a king, and he grew up in incredible wealth. And his father was kind of eccentric. His father only wanted his son, young Siddhartha, to experience perfection. So the father used a lot of the wealth to make sure that there was only perfect food and perfect people, and everything was young and beautiful. And Siddhartha was just like this super happy teenager. You know, life was amazing. One day he's playing hide and seek with his friends. He decides to hide outside the palace walls. So he drops outside the palace walls into India, 500 BC. Imagine what India was like then. Remember what India is like now, but imagine 500 BC. And so he saw death in the streets. He saw old age. He saw people with terrible disease. He saw just, the incredible suffering of human beings outside the palace walls. And with the heart of a Buddha and the zeal and naivete of a teenager, he makes a holy vow. I cannot and will not go back to my life of luxury until I have alleviated all the suffering in the world. And so he sets off his adventures, his travels. And as he travels, meeting with spiritual teachers and gaining wisdom, the more he travels, the more he realizes how big the world is. And the more he realizes the depth of suffering. And even in the ashrams, even where there's spiritual teachers, he sees suffering and ignorance. And finally, after many, many, many years, he collapses under the banyan tree. And he accepts there is suffering. Up until that point, he'd been trying to change it. I must change it. I must stop the suffering, which is a beautiful, noble thought. But it was when he accepts there is suffering that he became enlightened and became the Buddha of compassion. Next story is about Jesus, who I like to refer to as Yeshua. And think about Jesus on the cross, tortured and crucified. I won't go into the details, but crucifixion is a very painful, horrific, torturous way to die. It's an extraordinarily cruel form of execution. And they chose crucifixion because the Romans wanted to make a point. They wanted people to see the suffering and agony of people who stood up against Rome. So there's Jesus, who's been tortured and is dying a terribly painful death. What does he say? Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Profound acceptance. Acceptance above and beyond what most of us could really imagine. The third great spiritual teacher I want to talk about is Rumi, the poet Rumi. And right now, and for the past many years, the best-selling poet in America is a 12th century, probably gay, Islamic mystic. Now, isn't that cool? Okay. So what is it about Rumi's poetry that's lasted all these centuries? Why does he touch us so deeply? Well, a lot of people who love Rumi don't know this particular part of his story. When he was in middle age, he was already very, very beloved, and he was a beloved teacher. He met and fell in love with a man named Shams. And Shams was outrageous. He was a drunk. He was vile. He had literally been kicked out of several other towns. Like back in those days, he'd kind of wander into one town and piss everybody off and then kick him out. So he ended up in Rumi's village. And he and Rumi created and discovered this profound love affair rooted in their joint longing to understand the eternal beloved, to find God through the pathway of the mystic. Again, whether or not they were gay, we don't know. What we do know is there was something about the relationship that so offended Rumi's closest family and friends, including his son, who was in his early 20s, I believe, that the son and the family hired thugs to kidnap Shams, take him out to the desert where he was murdered, bury the body, never seen again. This is true. What's really amazing, and is also true, is that when Rumi discovered the double horror that his most beloved had been murdered and that his own closest circle had initiated and made that happen, well, of course, his heart broke wide open and his world just turned around. And he stood up and he started to physically just spin around and around and around. And by the way, the whirling dervish tradition of Persia began with Rumi spinning. Rumi's quite the folk hero. And that's how that whole tradition began, because as he was spinning in the depth of his pain, in the depth of the most horrible moment of his life, he came to this profound choice that he would find Shams. He wasn't going to find Shams out in the desert. He would find Shams through the pathway, the mystical pathway of the broken heart. And so much of Rumi's later poetry speaks to this. When you're reading poems and these things like, stomp on my heart and drink from the wine, he's talking about his own personal pain. And he references a lot to eternal beloved. And that was a double entendre for him. It was, of course, the big beloved, and also his desire to find Shams. Again, profound acceptance on the part of Rumi. And here we are, gobbling up his poetry 8 centuries later. So I leave us with this request that let's really do both things. Let's find our form of service. Many of you know what your form of service is and you're doing it. And some of you are maybe in that in-between time where your old life, your old relationship, your old job, your old place has kind of been ripped away or has fallen apart, and you're still finding like your new place, your new service. Do the service that you're called to do, and really work on compassion and acceptance, because we are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the imaginal selves of the new paradigm. Each and every one of us have our own role to play, and it's essential that we do it all with love. I love the Beatles, but I want to I want to change it from all you need is love to do everything with love. In fact, my friend Johanna Beekman rewrote the song for us for the Global Peace Tribe. So now one of our anthems is do everything with love. And that's my final message. Whether we are connecting one-on-one to our galactic family or our angelic realm, or whether we're doing something as epic as building the diplomatic mission, whether it's doing something as epic as what Adam Apollo is doing, or whether just you're a nurse and you take good care of people, God bless you, or you're a mother raising your child as best as you can. Whatever our role is, and every role is equally valuable, do it with love, do it with compassion, do it with acceptance. And as we raise our vibration, we become available more and more for the one-on-one intergalactic experience. And then collectively, we create the field of love, the field of energy that's ready to receive the high vibration of our galactic family. So thank you, everybody, for being here. I hope that what I've had to share is of value. Um, and a couple of things, I do want to invite people to come into the awakening world. Um, Join us. We are every Wednesday night and every Saturday. And right now, our awakening world family is watching this. And next week, there's going to be a very special version of the Awakening World. Just like I'm collaborating with Neil Gard today and with Sylvan. Next week, I'm collaborating with my old friend, Deborah Giusti, who just got back from Egypt. And she and the Stargate Experience and Vivian Chavot are going to be talking about some incredible things that took place in Egypt. Um, and that's going to be happening next Wednesday night. Just to give you a little taste of what happened, while they were doing sacred ceremony outside the pyramid of Giza, look at what they got a photograph of. That's not the moon. That is an enormous green orb that they all saw while they were actually taking the photograph. And then all of a sudden it came out over the pyramid. And so next Wednesday night, you're going to get a chance to see a lot of the extraordinary things that took place on the trip to Egypt. And we'll all kind of have a vicarious little trip to Egypt. Um, Also, this Saturday night, I'm really excited. We are going to be meeting a lot of the next generation of leaders. My good friend Chief Phil Lane, who's a wonderful wise elder, who just lit the eighth fire, which is a huge fulfillment of a long-term prophecy, will be with us, passing on the torch to a lot of wonderful young people. And we always have music, as Neil mentioned, we always have great music. Bob and Pookie Lee will be playing, and of course, our wonderful house musical artist, my co-pilot, Omar Shah, will be playing music. And Alexis Lombardo, one of the teenagers, well, she's actually, I think, in her early 20s, will be playing music as well. So join the Awakening World. You can do that by going to globalpeacetribe.com.